Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about The Exorcist from 1973. The Exorcist is often called the scariest movie of all time. It was a landmark horror film of the 70s and probably one of the most prestigious horror films of all time, as it was nominated for Best Picture, and I believe the first horror film to do so. This is an interesting film, I think, because probably, always up there with some of the greats, always considered one of the seminal classics you should watch on Halloween if you haven't. Things, kind of a notorious part of the horror genre. But I also think this is sort of not trying to be a horror film at all. I also think this kind of set the stage for the exorcism genre because they all sort of ripped off the structure and the idea of this. So it's a weird movie, particularly to review now. I don't know if it was ever the scariest film of all time for me. I think film ideas like that are kind of stupid. I think why it gets, that seems to be a big debate over it, whether it's boring and stuff, is because this is really a film about a loved one who has an issue and you cannot solve it. You cannot figure out how this happened. You cannot figure out what happened to them, why, all those things. And the fact that, you would eventually come to be so desperate to come to, have an exorcism, which sounds one of the crazy, obscure Catholic ideals. And I think that's what makes it pretty scary, because it feels so matter-of-fact in that kind of very 70s filmmaking. William Friedkin was a documentary filmmaker before it, previously on The French Connection, which had a lot of grit and grime, but still was filmed in a very kind of like naturalistic kind of way. And I don't think that's something that horror was really doing at this time. I mean, yes, especially with Night of the Living Dead, in the way Friedkin filmed it, no one had, based on the book by William Peter Blatty, although apparently he's doing a pretty direct adaptation of the book, so I've heard, never read the book. But I think that makes it go in this kind of slower 70s pace, where you're just like moving, you're just like going through what's going on with Linda Blair's character, what's going on, like how Ellen Bernstein's going through this whole thing, trying to figure out Jason Miller, a priest who's lost his way, or going things like that. So it's not, I think, trying to do what horror films do, especially now when people are like trying to play with the audience and stuff. This really isn't. This is telling the story of this girl who led to an exorcism, and there are certain parts that have more drama and flair to them. I mean, the window shot, of course, which is an iconic shot. It almost feels like it's not in the movie and not what the movie's about, but also is, the iconic imagery that most people associate with this film. And I think that kind of makes it scary, that it feels so real, that it feels so much like a problem that you would have, where you're constantly trying to get this problem solved, and you feel like if you just knew the key to it, you could figure it out. And that is something, I can relate to more now than when I first saw this movie. Linda Blair is playing Reagan. Reagan is the daughter of this famous actress, Chris McNeil, played by Ellen Bernstein, and her daughter looks like first she's having mental issues or something. They take her all these medical tests, but has been possessed by, in this film, we kind of are led to believe it's the devil, but apparently it's this weird demon called Pazuzu or something, so that's cool, I guess. That's different. They don't mention it in the movie, but I guess that came up in The Exorcist 2 or something. And at the same time, you see this priest played by Jason Miller, who's going through the whole film, like doubting his faith because of things that have happened to his mother in his life. But she comes to him because he's one of the few priests who has a background in psychiatry and psychology. I think it's he has some mental health background. He goes in with the priest played by Max von Sydow, and they famously do the exorcism to hopefully get this demon or the devil out of Reagan. I think one of the other things about this film, which horror doesn't ever really get to do, is it has a real amazing group of actors. Max von Sydow, specifically, like his old age makeup. So like, I didn't know that was old age makeup a couple of times I watched it. And then I think when I saw him in like Hannah and Her Sisters or something years ago, I was like, oh wow, he got so young. And then I looked up and saw that he did have old age makeup. And Max von Sydow, I mean, I'm sure William Friedkin was hyped to have a Bergman actor on set, but was a little more obscure then. Jason Miller, I quite like in this. He was a really well-regarded actor after this. In fact, he was offered Taxi Driver and turned it down, which I'm not sure if that's bad for him or good for us, or maybe his would have been better. I don't know. But I thought he was really good. He is kind of the soul, kind of like the second plotline, and I do think this film does very well having both him and Ellen Bernstein's characters, because it almost feels way more about them. It feels like the Reagan character played by Linda Blair is something, is not what the film is focused on. I mean, it is, but it isn't. She feels very supporting to me. I think she was nominated for supporting for this film. It feels like the film is about the people taking care of her, not necessarily her. And I think he's really good and plays that priest with a moral compass who it's been eroded because of all the horrible things that happened to him. And obviously, you know, we used that for the film to give us such a monumental ending. Ellen Bernstein is really good in this. I don't think it is her. Everyone's really good in this, to be perfectly fucking honest, but I don't think it's her like greatest performance or anything like that. I do think she's very good. I think I like her now. Alice doesn't live her anymore more, but I think her concern and her worry, and you know, a lot of people bring up the scene where she comes to the priest and is basically like begging him to see her daughter. She plays the idea of wanting to help your child or wanting to help your loved one. I think a lot of other actors, you get lost in the plot of it and not think of them as an actor, and I think Ellen Bernstein has the presence to give this a lot more of a humanity to it. As well as Linda Blair is really amazing in this, that she can do all the things she does in this. I know she's like dubbed and has a lot of makeup and stuff, but like you have to have a really good performer to do all those iconic shots and iconic movements and like everything that we take away from this film. That is memorable, including the spider walk thing, which was from the re-release, but you know, I think I've seen the re-release like once. Even that has become iconic. Everything she does in this, she's very good at selling that, probably more so than like I can't think of a great exorcism performance as much as her one was. You know, I'm not very religious at all, but the Catholicism stuff I can't really speak on. But the idea of a great evil coming in and infecting our world and not feeling like you have anything to do about it, I think that is one thing that has made this film stay to the point it has. Like, we don't let go of The Exorcist, and as much as maybe it's not the scariest movie of all time, but it is still a very notable film, and I think that is because it has such a strong background within it. I almost like don't want to talk about this film at length because it does feel so much like, oh, and this person's great, and Friedkin's direction's great, and the cinematography's great, and you know, first of all, one of the things I find interesting is like so much of this film was done practically in ways that like now seem so archaic and strange, but like even them doing a shot up the stairwell, there's no Steadicam, so they had to like create this camera rig to be able to do that. And me watching it, I just went, I don't know, they must have a Steadicam, even though I know time wise that makes no fucking sense, but like while I was watching it, I just accepted it. And like there's a lot of shots in this that I think we just accept and don't understand how that was like really hard thing to do, or how they ended up being able to do that. Seems a little crazy. The realness to it, it just feels very human, and I think without that humanity, however on the scary scale you find this film, wouldn't be there without it. Like, you have to have that there or you're not going to buy it. You're not going to be scared. You're not going to wonder if Reagan's going to get out of it. I still find this to be a really good movie. Maybe I'm not as expert in the exorcism genre and not a Catholic, and I can't go on and on about this film, but I did like revisiting it. I think this is like the third or fourth time. I think the original cut is the best cut, although the special edition is cool too. I just think it is a film that understands how scary it can be when someone's health who you love is out of your control and you're looking for something. And to be honest, like, maybe it was probably, going under that is probably more realistic, that it just keeps declining, and then it's just like goes off the rails. That's what happens to most people. But the idea that, you know, movie magic, of course you get saved because of this exorcism. Regardless of that ending, and because it took on supernatural elements, you had to do that. I do think that is essential to where it is, and like in the 70s when people were losing their faith in, you know, the government and everything going on in society and stuff. I think Jason Miller is almost like perfect for that kind of moment, but he plays disaffection so well. I think this film plays with having being sort of feeling you're rejected by God or rejected by good, and having a young girl sort of like swooped up within it is an incredibly scary thought, if you have kids or not. I think this is a monumental film because it's able to tell us a fear that could come up at any time, and we have no solve for, and there's nothing we can really do about it. If the devil does come, maybe hide your Ouija boards or whatever you're using to communicate with the dead, but those demons will come in and destroy your family, and there's not much you can do to stop it. And there's nothing scarier than having that question of, is there anything you can do, and would you be able to figure it out, or will they'll just be lost, in an asylum or in a home somewhere, or just dead. And that's almost kind of the scariest thing, is like, do you not just have faith in God, but do you also have faith in your family, and have faith that they can one day get better? Maybe that is the faith of this whole thing, is just having faith in the people you love and hoping they can get out of it. But the darkness and the scariness of the fact that you don't know when that is, I think, is terrifying, and makes this film kind of a staple of the horror genre. It doesn't feel like it's going to come out anytime soon. So if you've seen The Exorcist and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.